It's definitely looking like we are going to see the New York Rangers end up making some big moves this offseason. And I think there are two players on this team who, if the Rangers can avoid moving them in a trade, I think that's what's probably best for this team's kind of long-term future. And those two players are Braden Schneider and Will Cuylle. And I fully understand there are certain players who may become available via trade that the Rangers may have to include one or both of these guys in a possible trade package for a certain superstar. I fully get that. But at the end of the day, unless it is for someone of a certain caliber, to me, it really is important that, they remain on this team long term, because I think a guy like Will Cuylle and Braden Schneider bring a lot of what this team has been exactly kind of missing over the past years. And especially on the forward side of things there, especially before JT Miller came in there and even before a guy like Vincent Trocheck was signed there, especially, this team had a real lack of kind of some toughness, some grittiness out there, especially on the forward side of things. Then they went out there obviously a while ago, added in Trocheck there. Then there was a kind of a period where we didn't see a ton of that kind of added in, the toughness, the grittiness added in. Then you go out there, obviously we finally see, Sam Carrick added in this past summer. He signed a 3-year deal worth $1 million per season there. Then you go out this past season there and add in a guy like JT Miller. And then, of course, we see, a guy like Will Cuylle obviously really break out this season there, made his debut last season, of course, but really broke out this year. So we have some players now that are, showing on the forward side of things. There's some of that toughness and grittiness and physicality that this team obviously still needs more of. And I think trading away a guy like Will Cuylle just creates another kind of big need for that physicality and toughness. And with a guy like Will Cuylle especially as well, and we'll get on to Braden Schneider in a minute, but Will Cuylle is someone who I really don't think is anywhere near a finished product, and maybe he doesn't turn into this, but I don't see why he can't become around a point-per-game player, around that kind of 70 to 80-point mark or something around there, while bringing that toughness, while bringing that physicality, being a good two-way player as well, helping kill penalties. And, something that's really great about Will Cuylle as well is the fact that I don't really think there's kind of one area in his game that I think is necessarily kind of, not great or kind of below average. Like, obviously, he's not a perfect player. No player is necessarily, but there's not really kind of one area in his game that I would say he is kind of clearly like below average in compared to like the average NHL winger, right? Whereas a guy like, Panarin, for example, he may be an elite offensive threat, but let's be honest, defensively, he's not going to bring a whole lot there, and physically, he's not going to bring a whole lot either, right? But a guy like Will Cuylle, he may not be quite as good as Panarin offensively, but he is miles better defensively and miles better physically. So that's where, I think a guy like Will Cuylle really brings a lot of value, because there's not kind of one area in his game that I would say, oh man, he's going to be a liability defensively, or, he's only going to get you 30 points a season, right? This is a guy who can, be a top 5 hitter in the league there, be a more than solid, more than capable penalty killer there, be a well above average defensive winger, I think, and can put up maybe 70, 80 points in an NHL season there. Something around there is definitely a realistic kind of mark for someone like Will Cuylle at some point in his career. So to me, this is a guy who absolutely must stay around on this team long term, because he has all the intangibles and kind of aspects of a player that, this Rangers team definitely could use some more of. So trading him away, to me, just kind of creates an even bigger need of that kind of toughness, physicality, and, kind of solid two-way play in certain areas from wingers as well. So to me, Will Cuylle is a guy who you really do whatever you can possibly to try and keep him on your team, unless it is for, like I said, that real difference maker, like a true superstar caliber guy. And I'm not talking like a Jason Robertson there. To me, including Will Cuylle in a package where you're also giving up a lot more stuff on top of Will Cuylle for someone like Jason Robertson, to me, just makes no sense at all. So hopefully we don't see something like that happen there. But if it was for someone, of course, like a Matthew Tkachuk level guy, something like that, then obviously I think I'm more than willing to add in a guy like Will Cuylle, but it really does need to be for a real difference maker, not someone like a Jason Robertson, who, of course, has been rumored and kind of linked to the Rangers a bit as well. And next up here, we've got Braden Schneider, who I definitely think is someone who the Rangers should try and do their best to keep around long term. He brings some of what this team definitely needs more of, just like Will Cuylle. I mean, I think on both ends there, the defensive side of things and the forward side of things, both of those groups need some more toughness and physicality if this team wants to become a real top kind of, Stanley Cup contender. This team has to add some more toughness. It's not just about toughness. It also needs to be some skill, some talent there, some good defensive play, good offensive play, whatever it is. But I just think adding in some more kind of tougher players is kind of a pretty beneficial thing potentially, and trading away either Will Cuylle or Schneider just kind of is completely against that. So that's why I want to see both these players remain on this team. And a guy like Braden Schneider hasn't quite maybe taken that, massive step in his development like we saw a guy like Will Cuylle do, of course, from, the 23-24 season to, last season there, the 24-25 season, right? He took a massive step up, which Braden hasn't quite done yet, but I still think it's possibly could, and it may not be that big of a step like Will did because it was like a fourth liner all the way up to like a, top line caliber guy, right? So it was a pretty massive jump, but I still think, Braden has a lot of potential left there. I'm not saying he's ever going to become a, bona fide kind of top pairing caliber guy, but to become a more than solid kind of number 3 or number 4, like a second pairing caliber defenseman, I think is definitely a very realistic outcome for Braden Schneider. And at moments, he definitely shows that talent there. I think overall, he's about that caliber right now, but I think there's more to his game than what we've seen so far there. I still think he's a solid defenseman right now, but with his age, he's still quite young there. He's still developing. Sometimes defensemen take a little longer than forwards can, so, it's not impossible to see a guy like, Braden Schneider take another year or two now to kind of eventually take that massive step up in his game and, really develop. So I'm hopeful that he'll eventually take that step, and hopefully we'll do it this season there under Mike Sullivan and the new coaching staff there. And, maybe he has a new defense partner at some point as well, right? That is definitely a possibility if the Rangers make a nice big move there, adding a true kind of top 4 caliber left-handed defenseman. Maybe he's paired up alongside Schneider. I have no idea, but I just think there's definitely more to Schneider's game. He has some more room to grow, and he's a big, tough, physical defenseman, good defensive game there, decent puck mover. I just think, get rid of that, especially with him being quite cheap right now as well. To me, would not really make a lot of sense there. He is one of those guys who I hope to see him kind of around here long-term on this Rangers team because, like I said, he brings a lot of what this team needs. And, like I said, at the end of the day there, if they go out there and they trade away Braden Schneider and or Will Cuylle, I'm not going to be happy with it either way because I am a pretty big fan of both these players there. I've been watching them since they got drafted. Well, even before actually Will Cuylle got drafted there. I do watch a bit of OHL hockey, of course. So, I did end up watching him quite a bit there when he was playing with the Windsor Spitfire there, even before he was drafted, even after, of course. So, Will especially has been someone who I've been very, very high on for a long, long time. I got to watch him a lot in his junior days back with the Windsor Spitfires. So I've gotten familiar with this player, and from what I can tell, not saying I'm a pro scout here or anything like that, but he definitely is a pretty unique player. There's not many guys in the league that, can be like a top 5 hitter, bring a lot of physicality, toughness, the energy that he plays with the offense and the defense while still being a very, very young player. So keeping a guy like that around long-term, to me, makes a lot of sense there. And also a guy like Braden Schneider, who, it's not that easy to find defensemen at that size there, with that talent there, at that age, and obviously who are going to be that cheap as well. So to me, keeping both these players makes a lot of sense for this team for not only the next couple seasons, but also, kind of 5 years plus down the road as well. These guys definitely could be some very kind of core, kind of cornerstone pieces of this franchise for the potential long-term future. Anyways, that's going to do it for today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content. And also, definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on today's video. Do you agree with my thoughts and kind of take there on wanting to see, Will Cuylle and Braden Schneider kind of remain on this team long term and kind of thinking that it's what's best for this franchise probably going forward? Do you want to see them traded away? Do you want to see them stay? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below on Braden Schneider and Will Cuylle. And of course, I'll catch you next one. And let's go Rangers.